Stay back!
With the latest God of War passing its 1-year anniversary, I thought I'd go back and rank all 7 of these fantastic action games from the worst to the best.
The gods care nothing for them. Men should not pray to monsters. The hands of death could not defeat. Sisters of fate could not hold. And you will not see the end of this day. I will have my revenge!
Before we begin, go and let me know in the comments below how you would rank these games, and if you enjoy discussing video games, then maybe think about clicking that subscribe button and staying tuned for all our future videos to come.
It has been too long. Never again.
Coming in at last place is God of War Ascension. Now Ascension is by no means a bad game, but it really feels like the black sheep of the franchise. Santa Monica had finished the trilogy and the story of Kratos, and yet they decided to make a third prequel game, and it ends up just going through the same motions as previous installments. It's worth noting that Ascension tried to adapt God of War into an online game, and while some may have enjoyed it, it was repetitious and it felt like it pulled a bit of focus away from the single player side. Probably why the idea was rejected from the latest game in the series. Ascension has strong positives as its environments are expansive and breathtaking, and the opening battle takes place within a living prison that morphs around you, and like most of these games, the soundtrack captures the essence of the themes and setting perfectly. However, combat saw a few downgrades. The 4 special abilities you collect in the game are just generic elemental add-ons for your Blades of Chaos, and the blades themselves lack the punch that makes them so much fun to use in the previous games. Outside of the less satisfying combat, Ascension suffers from a lackluster narrative, forgettable main villains, and the Greek templates had become drier and drier to the point where we're now fighting elephants with earrings.
A Spartan never lets his back hit the ground. Right, brother?
I will not lose you again.
Coming in at 6th place is God of War Ghost of Sparta, which was developed by Ready at Dawn for the PSP. Ghost of Sparta released after God of War 3, and so acted as yet another prequel. This game introduced Kratos' mother Callisto and his brother Deimos, and it ends up showing us a side to Kratos we hadn't seen before in the franchise, due to his interactions with his blood relatives. We also see flashbacks to Kratos' younger self, which flesh out his character even more. Ghost of Sparta starts off strong, however once you reach the 3rd act, the story becomes so generic and ultimately tedious, involving the game's villain, yet another Greek god, Thanatos, the god of death. But with us killing the gods in God of War 3, it's just so tiring hearing about them all over again. But I guess this is the bane of prequel games.
The gods do not decide my fate, Thanatos!
The gods decide, and the Sisters of Fate make it so. You are nothing but a pawn in a game you don't even know is being played.
Outside of the new story, God of War Ghost of Sparta is the same classic experience but on a handheld. You make combos with square and triangle, you collect a secondary weapon around the middle of the game, and you collect 4 special abilities throughout. It's a highly uninspired game, the bosses don't really differ all that much from other bosses in the franchise, and the levels are forgettable, never breaking away from the same drab colour palette. It's a fantastic hack and slasher for the PSP, don't get me wrong, with some brilliant character building for Kratos. But as far as God of War games go, this is on the more forgettable side.
You are free now, brother.
Elysium falls to Kratos. She will perish.
No! I will not let the gods take her from me again!
Coming in at 5th place is the first prequel in the series, Chains of Olympus, which was also developed by Ready at Dawn, like Ghost of Sparta. Chains of Olympus didn't massively reinvent the series formula, but for the first handheld title in the franchise, that wasn't its goal. God of War Chains of Olympus did a fantastic job bringing the same console experience and putting it on the small PSP. It still retained the fast action you expect from God of War, the large battles, and intricate puzzles. Taking place before the first game, Chains of Olympus is set during the time that Kratos served the gods. The god of the sun, Helios, has been kidnapped, and so it is your job to find out by whom. It has a detailed plot filled with great characters, like the main villain Persephone, who was abandoned by her gods and forced to marry Hades. She's not the happiest gal, and it shows a deeper side to Kratos and his connection with his deceased daughter. Chains of Olympus may have been more of the same and was fairly short, however it fit the tight, responsive gameplay, the fantastical mythical storytelling and grand presentation onto the PlayStation Portable.
Tell the god of war I am his no longer. Tell him he is not safe while I walk the earth. I will find Pandora's box, and I will use it to see him tremble and fall before me.
At 4th spot is the original God of War, a glorious PS2 action game directed by David Jaffe and developed by Sony Santa Monica in 2005. God of War featured a large array of refreshing Greek beasts, a vast selection of various combos and maneuvers that starred the infamous Blades of Chaos that twirl around like sparklers in a night sky. And God of War took place in a world comprised of giant set pieces that would come up and appear almost seamlessly, without barely any loading screens at all. The narrative stars the iconic PlayStation character Kratos, an ash-white Spartan warrior. He's tasked within the game by the goddess Athena to stop her brother Ares, the god of war, from destroying her city of Athens. God of War does well in not giving away everything about Kratos at once. The character is instead shrouded in mystery, and the world around him will often open up memories from his past with flashbacks that tell our backstory of how Kratos has gotten to where he is. It all builds a remarkable origin story for the character. God of War's majestic narrative is helped by rich dialogue and well-directed cutscenes. Kratos starts out as an anti-hero, but as you learn more about his past crimes, he slowly turns into a false hero, and you'll even sometimes think that you're playing the villain. But journey further and you become attached to Kratos, as you realise he's on this suicidal quest in which he literally climbs out of hell itself, all for redemption, and so that he can rewrite his own wrongdoings. Outside of the rich storytelling, God of War is a sparkling action game that truly felt different to the demon-killing counterpart, and would be the inspiration for multiple similar, energetic, graceful melee action games that followed. God of War also featured fabulous control, having a dodge button matched to the right stick, and an instantaneous block button that has no slowdown. God of War was a top-tier action game and birthed Sony's new hit fantasy franchise back in 2005.
Zeus! Your son has returned. I bring the destruction of Olympus!
Kicking off the top 3, we have God of War 3, which saw release in 2010 for the PlayStation 3. And that's a lot of 3s. God of War 3 begins exactly where the second game ended. Kratos is climbing Mount Olympus with his army of titans to face what's left of the Olympian gods, all of whom star as boss encounters within the game. When Zeus attacks Kratos and Gaia off guard, you plummet all the way to the bottom, and this is where your adventure starts. You regain all your lost powers and strength, climb Mount Olympus, and defeat Zeus. Unfortunately, this is my biggest gripe with this installment, as the narrative just isn't as compelling as previous games in the franchise. Zeus is given completely different reasonings behind his actions, and they completely change his character almost. And the plot itself has no major developments, twists, or even important revelations. You start the game off to kill Zeus, and that's how the game ends. What happens is it makes the whole experience feel like it could have just been the final act of God of War 2 rather than stretched into its own game. Thankfully, God of War 3 made many advancements into the combat, featuring new visceral animations and extra weapons to collect within the game. The bosses in God of War 3 are incredibly satisfying to tear apart. You face Poseidon, Hades, Hercules, and many more infamous Olympians. These boss battles showcase just how gigantic God of War 3's world truly is, how epic the orchestral score is, and of course how violent Kratos can be. God of War 3 was full of flavour and personality. It was a climactic end to the trilogy and one of the most enjoyable PS3 games to return to.
Zeus should have kept you where you belong. No matter how many gods fall, there will always be another to stand against you.
They will fall as well.
The death of Olympus means the death of us all.
Then prepare for your death.
Sire, if all on Olympus will deny me my vengeance, then all on Olympus will die. I have lived in the shadow of the gods for long enough. The time of the gods has come to an end.
At second place is God of War 2, a PS2 exclusive that released weeks after the PS3 had already launched. But God of War 2 wasn't to be stopped. It's often regarded as one of the last great games for the PS2. Taking place after the first game, 2 begins with Kratos as the new God of War. However, all his power is robbed of him by Zeus, who kills him in cold blood. But we know death cannot hold the Spartan. The Titan Gaia revives Kratos, and using her aid and guidance, you'll travel through Greece to gain the power to kill Zeus. Before you set off on your quest, you alert the last remaining Spartan warrior about your plan to attack Olympus, and order him to rally up any other Spartans that he can find. Kratos gets fully fleshed out in God of War 2. Sometimes we enjoy being powerful and evil. Others we can relate to him and even feel some empathy. But it doesn't stop there. Even some of the gods, like Athena, have much bigger roles in the plots than the first game, and are often intertwined with Kratos' story. God of War 2 boasts a humongous selection of boss battles, 4 times the amount than in the original game. You'll be facing the gargantuan Colossus, classic Greek heroes such as Theseus and Perseus, who dare get in Kratos' way, the mighty Kraken, and even Zeus himself in a climactic confrontation. The bosses this time around are longer, much more dynamic. You get crushed by these bosses, and you get smashed by these bosses. And still Kratos comes back kicking and screaming, and it all delivers a very enthralling experience that is hard to put down. God of War 2 also has a remarkable boss encounter which makes you question your own actions within the game. It's dark and it's very unclear who you're fighting until after it's over. It's revealed to both you and Kratos that it's the last Spartan from earlier who was sent to find aid. After a quite touching moment, you feel the anger upon Kratos and yourself for killing one of your last remaining allies.
Now you are all that is left. I have faith that our brothers of Sparta will live on through the true God of War.
Zeus! Is this how you face me, coward? I am through doing the bidding of the gods! Come down here and face me now, Zeus!
A boss with a plot twist like that, I never seen anything like it when I first played it. The combat in God of War 2 was just as epic and visceral as before, but with a few upgrades that make it more fun to play through than the original. Like opening chests no longer requires button mashing, but just simply holding the button down. Climbing downwards is made much easier and faster. Orbs can travel to you from further distances, and you can now cancel your special attack to save wasting some of the special meter. Kratos also gets a new grapple feature that lets you swing like Spider-Man on certain ledges. God of War 2 had one of the best soundtracks in gaming history, stunning set pieces, and perfect pacing. But there's only one entry in the franchise that, in my opinion, has topped it to this day.
But I am your monster no longer.
And coming in at first place is the latest PS4 God of War, which was directed by the God of War 2's director, Cory Barlog. Cory knocked it out of the park once again. God of War 2018 follows from God of War 3, showing us a new side to the Kratos character. Abandoning his destructive past, Kratos has moved far up north to the lands of Norse mythology. Santa Monica has done more than a fabulous job creating the lands of Midgard and fitting them all into a franchise that has been so closely connected to Greek mythology. God of War 2018 also travels at a different pace to elder games in the franchise, having much more time for exploration, storytelling, and RPG systems that have been newly implemented. Kratos is also accompanied by his new son, Atreus, and their relationship is presented far differently than other games before it, like in Ico, Resident Evil 4, or Joel and Ellie from The Last of Us. See, here Kratos isn't just trying to survive with his son against the harshness of the North. He's not just trying to be a great father, but he's also trying to redeem his past failures and rage from the previous 6 games in the franchise. All of this comes together to offer a complex relationship that you will follow throughout the entire adventure as Kratos tries to hide his past from his son. And the camera is also in one continuous shot all the way throughout the game, never cutting away from what the game is truly about. The combat was also improved so much that I personally prefer it here than over the top combat of the previous games. God of War 2018 shifted to a third-person camera perspective, making it a much more personal adventure, but you also feel you have more options and control in the combat. A new implemented weapon was the Leviathan Axe, a deadly cold and bitter weapon that has plenty of upgrades, moves to unlock, and add-ons which make it much stronger in different areas. The combat feels like it takes elements from the older games and blends them into a new refreshing system that focuses on close quarters and ranged attacks, offering much more versatility than the past 6 games. Ultimately, God of War 2018 had some monotonous, repeated bosses, but really it just felt more evolved and unique and epic than the previous games in the franchise, but still featured the building blocks that made the combat, The lore, the storytelling, the characters, the set pieces and the music just as good as those previous games. It's truly a masterpiece. So that's my ranking of the God of War games. Now obviously my ranking isn't the right one. Let me know your lists in the comments below, and subscribe to stay up to date with all the latest content. Thank you so much for watching everyone, and take care.